Hello, I'm Morrie Enders, Executive Director of the Lincoln Community Playhouse, and here to talk to you today about Monty Python's Spamalot. So, normally we're in a room together, but we're going to do it by podcast today, which is kind of fitting because Monty Python's first movie was called And Now for Something Completely Different. So, this is completely different. So, here we go. Monty Python was born in May of 1969. 5 Brits, Graham Chapman, John Cleese, Eric Idle, Terry Jones, and Michael Palin, and 1 American, Terry Gilliam, who had been knocking around in various BBC television and radio comedy shows, banded together to overturn the conventions of sketch comedy by producing a stream of consciousness television show. When they went into the BBC, they pitched it as a new comedy show, and the head of the BBC said, well, is it going to have songs? And they went, we don't know. Is it going to have guest stars? We don't know. They actually hadn't thought much about it. They just knew that they liked each other, they respected each other's work, and thought that they would make a good group. The BBC decided to actually throw the dice, and Monty Python's Flying Circus was first broadcast on BBC One on October 5th, 1969. 45 episodes. It's only 45 episodes, but they changed comedy. How did they do that? Well, their sketches didn't necessarily have a beginning, middle, and an end, and they played with television conventions. For instance, sometimes they would take the credits that scroll at the end of the television show, and they put them in the middle. So it was kind of a free-form, as I said, stream of consciousness way to put together a television show. They also became popular through records and books. So one of their records is called the Matching Tie and Handkerchief record. It was the first 3-sided record. So how they did that was there were 2 sets of grooves on the B side. So what you heard when you turned over the record to the B side depended on where you started the needle, because there were 2 separate different tracks. They also produced their first book, the Red Book, which was published with a blue cover. So the BBC was, money pinching, and so they were going to record over all of the master tapes of the Monty Python shows. It was in order to save money. And then suddenly a PBS affiliate in Dallas, Texas, decided to show the episodes on Sunday nights beginning in 1974. Once that started, PBS stations all across America started to show Monty Python, and Monty Python's Flying Circus conquered America. Ironically, the leg in the popularity from England to America meant that by the time Americans were really into Monty Python, the individual members of Python were splitting up to do solo projects in film and television. But once they found out they were big in America, they kept together and decided to produce movies and do concert appearances. Their first film had been a rehash of television sketches called And Now for Something Completely Different in 1971. And now with renewed American success, they decided to do a second film, and they thought about tackling the King Arthur legend. Now, much of the first crack at the material while they were sitting around writing was focused on putting King Arthur in modern settings like shopping at Harrods. But then they latched onto the image of King Arthur pretending to ride through the countryside, followed by a squire clacking coconut shells together for horse hooves. When they came up with that image, they decided to make a real Arthur movie. It also helped that they knew that they didn't have a very big budget and they couldn't afford real horses. So the movie for the Monty Python movie was called Monty Python and the Holy Grail, released in 1975. This movie, of course, is the source material for Spamalot. Arthurian legend worked well for them because the story provided a foundation for sketch comedy as opposed to trying to complete a full film narrative. Because in the Holy Grail story, we meet the knights, they start their quest, they get split up into different adventures or comedy sketches, and then they unite for the ending. Although episodic, the quest for the Holy Grail provides the foundation for a false forward thrust throughout the movie. It took 13 screenings and a lot of editing to turn the movie from a flop to a hit. Since then, it has become one of the most quotable movies of all time. So now let's skip to 1979 and the film The Life of Brian. This satire on religion was the story of Brian, a person who is mistaken for the Messiah. At the end of the film, Brian is crucified along with several other people. A real downer of an ending for a comedy film. So Python member Eric Idle suggested ending the movie with a song, something cheery, maybe even a whistling song, kind of like a Disney movie would have. Everybody thought that that was a terrific idea, and so Eric went home, picked up his guitar, he had the song's framework done in 20 minutes, and finished the whole thing off in an hour. This song, Always Look on the Bright Side of Life, is now featured in Spamalot. It also became a hit across England when British football fans started to sing it when their teams were losing. A BBC radio DJ played it every morning. It eventually went to number 3 on the British charts and number 1 in Ireland, which is especially fulfilling for Eric Idle because The Life of Brian was banned in Ireland. But the song made it to the charts. Even better, Always Look on the Bright Side of Life is now the most sung song at British funerals. It actually bumped out My Way. After the final Python film, The Meaning of Life, in 1983, Eric Idle began to look for other projects. Now, he was thinking maybe about a stage musical, and at this time, the stage musical was dominated by the serious operetta-ish works of Andrew Lloyd Webber. So Idle went to Mel Brooks with the idea of turning Mel Brooks' film, The Producers, into a musical, a way to bring comedy back to musical comedy. Mel Brooks said he was too busy with his own movies and thank you very much, but he wasn't interested. So then Idle moved on to Monty Python and the Holy Grail, a film he realized was tremendously still loved in the United States. So there was a lot of potential for it to be a success. The film actually was even turned into a CD-ROM game at the time. Now, Mel Brooks, of course, would eventually get around to making a musical of The Producers, which was also a huge hit. Now, throughout their partnership, each Python had veto power over any sketch or idea or career move. So one Python could say no, and that would be the end of it. So Idle was worried that one of the Pythons, or all of them, would veto the idea of doing a stage musical of The Holy Grail. So, in order to prevent a veto, he decided to write it first and then present it to them. Once it was in a big shape, and they saw that it could be funny and could be worked for a stage musical, they all gave him thumbs up. So Mike Nichols was hired to direct the show and bring it to Broadway. Mike Nichols, a famous director of comedies, and he agreed with the Python ethic that the best way to make things funny was by treating them very seriously. He did have a little problems with one song in Spamalot. It's a song about making it on Broadway. He thought the lyrics might be too controversial, but decided to leave it up to the first night's audience to decide. When the song was greeted with laughs and cheers, he left it in the show. When Spamalot opened on Broadway in 2005, it won rave reviews. It sold $1 million in tickets the day after it opened. Later, it would pick up a Tony Award for Best Musical and a Grammy Award for the cast recording. So as you get ready to see Spamalot, be prepared for a lot of goofiness. And remember, anything can happen because it's Monty Python, and be ready to whistle. Enjoy the show.